Now we're going to look at a very famous case in AI, not involving hiring, but involving jail and sending people to jail. And this case involved a group called ProPublica, which is a public interest research group, and an AI tool called Compass, which is technically the Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions tool. But what this tool really is a tool that predicts whether someone who has been arrested for a crime will commit another crime. And this was and is important in the United States for the following reason. Uh, in the US, like in many places, when you are arrested for a crime, you go before a judge and you have not been found guilty of that crime yet. You've just been arrested. So there is no legal reason for you to go to jail. So there's the question, should you be sent home, freed? This is called freed on bail in the US. Should you be freed until you come back to court and have your case? And then if you are found guilty, you go to jail. If you are found innocent, you go back home again. Now, in some cases, defendants who have been arrested are considered so dangerous that they are denied bail. That is, they are sent to jail, awaiting trial, even though they have not yet been found guilty. Now, this is clearly an injustice. Everybody agrees about that. No one should be sent to jail before they have been found guilty of a crime. However, in some cases, that there is sufficient confidence that the person will commit another crime if they are released, that they are sent to jail in the name of social interest or social welfare. And people will say, look, it is unfair to this particular person, but the benefit of society demands that this person be kept in jail, even though it is unfair. So that's what is at stake here, whether or not people are going to be sent to jail awaiting trial, or whether people will be granted bail and can go home. Now, in some cases, this can be a difficult decision. And what the Compass tool did and does, still used, or forms of it are still used, what the Compass tool does is it analyzes information about a person and makes a AI prediction makes a prediction with the data, makes a prediction about whether they will commit another crime or not. And then the judge uses that information as part of their decision making process about whether they send the person home or hold them in jail. So, what kind of information does Compass look at? It looks at your criminal history, like how many crimes have you committed in the past? How serious are they? It looks at your age, your gender. It looks at your education, your employment history. It looks about at whether or not you're on drugs, mental health kinds of things, social history, family and community support, domestic violence, child abuse. These are just some of the things and that go into this algorithm. So this information is gathered about the person, and then it is used to make a prediction about whether they will commit another crime if they are released. So that's what the Compass system does. Now here's what ProPublica found. ProPublica found, and Compass both the two sides agree on this. They found that in a certain sense, people who were black and people who were white were treated equally. So you see on the Compass side of the graph here, the percentages of people who were arrested, who were either held in jail or sent home for whites and blacks were about the same. And then they also did a study. Now this is there's some difficulty here because obviously if someone is held in jail, you don't know whether they would have committed another crime or not. But some statistical methods were then used to predict whether they would have or not. And for our purposes, even though these are not, we cannot be completely confident of these statistics. For our purposes, we are going to accept these statistics as true. So we are going to say that we have a data set where we know if people went to jail whether they would or would not have committed another crime, or if they were sent home, whether they would or would not have committed another crime. Obviously, in the second case, we know because either they did or they did not. But we don't know in the first case, though we're making some projections. And let's just assume those projections are right for our argument. Now, assuming those are right, what Compass said is that blacks and whites should be treated equally, meaning that there's the same person, whether they're black and white, um, should be equally likely to be sent home or sent to jail. And that's what the Compass algorithm did. And you can see that here. About the same proportion of blacks and whites were sent to jail. And it's good that they were sent to jail because they would have committed another crime. And about the same percentage were sent to jail wrongfully. That is, they were sent to jail even though they would not have committed another crime. And then again, also for black and whites of those who were sent home, about the same proportion were sent home correctly because they did not commit another crime. And about the same proportion were sent home incorrectly because they did commit another crime. So that's what Compass said is fair. ProPublica disagreed. And they disagreed because they used an idea called group fairness. They said that when we talk about fairness, we should not talk about individuals, but about groups. And this is very, very controversial. But there are some people who make the strong arguments that when the subject of fairness, again, it should not be individuals, where Compass transparently treats people fairly. But instead, we should talk about whether groups entirely are being treated fairly. And in this case, what Compass said is if we're going to be fair to groups, then we should not look at percentages. We should look at raw numbers. And we should adjust things so that the exact same number of blacks and whites are improperly jailed. And you can do that statistically. And you can rearrange the Compass numbers so that they are predictions that the judge sees will ensure that the same number of blacks and whites are unnecessarily jailed. And maybe that makes sense because perhaps what is the worst case? The worst case scenario is someone jailed, even though they are not going to commit another crime. So if you do that, you see the results in the other side. You see that the same number of blacks and whites are jailed unnecessarily, and the same number are jailed correctly amongst those who are jailed. But amongst those who are sent home, there is this huge difference. A far, far higher proportion of blacks commit crimes, and a number of blacks commit crimes than whites. ProPublica says this is fair. They say it's fair because what we should look at, and the only thing we should look at when we talk about criminals, is balancing race, not individuals, balancing groups. And we should look at the worst outcome, which is people being unnecessarily jailed. That's where fairness should operate, and everything else happens as it will. Now, there are strong advocates for this position, and you can look up studies and just look for arguments in favor of ProPublica. Though I think most people now take the Compass position. And what that means for our purposes is first, I wanted to say that there is a debate in the subject of fairness about whether we should talk about fairness in terms of individuals or groups, one. And then two, the answer to that question is for most people at most times, it seems like fairness should be something we talk about in terms of individuals, not in terms of groups. Nevertheless, the argument remains open and work is being done on both sides. Now, I would like to conclude with just a couple further points. The first is a single slide. There is a dilemma between privacy and fairness. Everyone, I think we can all agree, we all want privacy to be maintained for people in the world of AI. And we all want AI to treat us fairly. And I think everybody agrees about that. The dilemma and the problem is that we can't have both. If we want to defend privacy, then that means we don't know things like what race someone is, what religion they believe in, what their sexual orientation is, what their education is, what their religious beliefs are. I mean, privacy means computers, we don't have easy access to that information. So if we want to defend privacy strongly in AI ethics, then we will delete that information and not gather it if possible. By contrast, if we want to be fair, we need all that information. I mean, we can't know if a tool is treating men and women equally unless we know whether the applicants are all men, if they're men or if they're women. And we can't know if the tool is treating, let's say, Jews and Christians equally unless we ask the applicants, well, are you Jewish or are you Christian? And we can't know if homosexuals and heterosexuals are being treated equally if we don't ask. So you have to make a choice in the world of fairness. If you want, if fairness is the highest value in what you want to defend, then you need to violate a lot of privacy. You need to get a lot of information about people. Otherwise, you have no way of knowing whether the machine is being fair. Whereas by contrast, if you want to defend privacy strongly, if you want to say, look, this should be one of the most important values that we defend when we create AI tools, then it's going to be very difficult to know whether that tool is treating different users fairly because we don't know enough about the particular users to define where the biases might exist. So there's no answer to that dilemma. That's why it's a true dilemma. You have to choose one or the other. It's an important aspect of fairness.